everybody. This is Ramon Ray, publisher of zoneofgenius.com, and this is the Rundown with Ramon. Thanks for being here. If you weren't here, well, we wouldn't be having a show talking to my friend, Justin Konikow, who I've gotten to know for a number of years. I don't think we've met in person, but our hearts beat at the same vibration and more. So welcome, Justin Konikow, to the Rundown with Ramon podcast, video, nationally syndicated show, whatever you wish to call it. Glad you're here today, my friend. How are you?
I'm great, Ramon. Thanks for having me. I didn't know I had a brother in New Jersey, but I sure do now.
Yes, indeed. Vacation capital of the world. You got to add that.
That's right.
But good to have you here, Justin. Tell us today, who are you? Family, what you do, who you serve. Just unpack a little bit about who Justin Konikow is today.
Yeah. So if I think of the order of things in my life, first, I'm a child of God. I'm a husband to an incredible woman named Shannon. I'm a father to a beautiful little girl named Faith. And I'm a guy that, pretty simple at the end of the day. I live in southwestern Ontario, Canada. I own a real estate brokerage with my wife called Prime Real Estate Brokerage. We also have a very small media company called Prime Media Productions, which really became necessary with the level of content and media we were doing for the real estate branch. And in that space where I guess business leaders kind of look to me for information on that space is we're a Navy SEAL team of experts in the real estate industry. We operate in southwestern Ontario, Canada, and we're one of the only ones on the planet that do residential, commercial, and investments. But more than that, we actually have a global network. So you've seen it in person where if somebody needs an agent in the UK, in Texas, in Florida, LA, like they call me and I connect them with my network. It's something that I've always loved doing. I'm a big fan of people. So we've developed a global network that we can work with. And by proximity, have partners all over the world. And from on a local level, we love to be somebody that can affect change in communities and really change the landscape of what it means to transact in real estate in our little area.
I love it. And Justin, how can people find you? Those who are interested in working with you, give us a few websites, links, 1-800 number fax machine, whatever you like, of how people can reach you, please.
So I've actually separated my two platforms to make it really easy for people. So if you're curious about my opinion on the world of real estate, interest rates, the restriction of capital, cities that are really going to have to reinvent themselves, you can go to primebrokerage.ca. That's my website. But I would tell you to go to YouTube first. That's where you're really going to hear my opinion on my 10 predictions for real estate in 2024. So if you're in that space, Prime Real Estate Brokerage on YouTube. Justin Konikow is more of whatever you'd call my personal brand. And the reason I separated the two is the people that go to Justin are the ones that want to become more productive, that want to understand how to do sales and marketing at a level that maybe they don't think that they're capable of, but I show them the secrets on those platforms on how I did it and how I'm continuing to do it. I use it a little bit to hold myself accountable to make sure I'm always improving, but that's it. Prime Real Estate Brokerage for real estate, and then Justin Konikow for business and entrepreneurship.
I love it. And I think fan number, we just had studies, Oh, Fred just gave me the report. We just had studies come in. Ramon is the second rated Justin Konikow YouTube fan. The studies have just come in from the global rating service. So definitely.
I appreciate that very much.
Justin on YouTube. He does a live show as of today, Fridays regularly, and et cetera, et cetera. Justin, give us the highlights of what brought you here today, whatever you wish to share, but give us the big major highlights of where have you been. You don't got to talk about your mama, your daddy, unless you want to, and it's relevant, but what brought you here today? And then I want to dive into one thing I've observed from you, Justin, is you seem very purposeful and very intentional. I don't even know how to ask it, but I know you'll know how to answer. But before we do that, just break down of what brought you here to be this amazing human you are today.
Yeah, well, to answer both questions at the same time, probably a lack of purpose and a lack of intention brought me to where I am today. So a young kid, grew up in Montreal, and parents definitely had a big part in my life and guiding me. They were entrepreneurs. My mom worked at a bank. My dad had a non-destructive testing company in Montreal, worked for DuPont for a very long time. DuPont ended up laying him off because they were doing some cutbacks, and he had moved his whole family from Toronto to Montreal at that time. So he took a risk on himself, took a bank loan out, bought the list of supplies and clients, and basically opened up his own company. So I grew up watching them build that company from the ground up, and late nights and, early mornings and all the things that comes with entrepreneurship, but like the real gritty part of it. I think where the story of me finding who I am today starts was always work related, I think, and always wanting to try all kinds of different things. So was very shy as a kid, ended up using humor to probably deal with my insecurities, a bit of a class clown, got bullied a little bit in school, and that kind of made me put some walls up and maybe get around some dangerous people that would I felt would protect me from situations like that again. Fell into some bad groups of people, but there was always one constant. I always worked hard, right? So I worked at delis, automotive shops, landscaping. I can go on and on. Every job you can imagine. I worked.
You would outwork anybody. That's one thing about Justin. I will outwork you
24/7. And I mean, I worked at Metro, which is a grocery store chain, and I was in the fish market, and then I was in the deli, and then I was in the butcher market, then I was a bag boy. Like I was always just, I enjoyed work. I don't know, maybe it was just something where my wires were crossed, but ended up getting into a little bit too much trouble when I was in Montreal and decided that I needed a change, right? I had always felt like there was more for me. So I had to leave the environment I was in to potentially find the person that I wanted to become. Came to southwestern Ontario in the early 2000s and did what I do, found a job and started working in hospitality. And, that was great because I met a mentor at that time. His name was Mike Smith. And he showed me what servant leadership was like. And if I think back on my history, when I think about the purpose piece of it, it always went back to servant leadership. It was being around in a place of service to other people. Like customer service was 90% of the jobs that I had. So I worked in this company, started off as a bouncer, couldn't fight, and ended up being somebody that had to learn how to talk. And we had thousands of people and lots of fights that I dealt with. Became a bar back, then a supervisor of the bar back because nobody was taking accountability, and then worked my way up in that company to become the head marketing coordinator for the entire company. And I worked hand in hand with my mentor. And then met my amazing wife, Shannon. And she really kept pushing me, saying, there's something more for us. There's something more for us. And really wanted to do something on our own. And she had came from a background where similar story. Her parents were entrepreneurs, opened up a car dealership in a town population of 400 that ended up being very blessed and became one of the top Ford Lincoln dealers in all of Canada. And I think number 8 for Lincoln, number 1 for trucks in Ontario. Like they were unbelievable in terms of the business that they built. And it really came down to very core principles: working hard, treating people fairly, and serving other people in an industry like automotive that can be something very brutal of an industry for consumers out there. So where we ended up where we're at today is she kept pushing me to get into real estate. I told her I didn't want to be a grease ball on a golf course, and I didn't know any agents that worked hard. She tricked me into getting my license. My aptitude for customer service and marketing with her aptitude for business. She's an MBA from the Richard Ivey School of Business. We then created the company that we have now. And we started off like anybody else, a couple agents in a small little town. And now we have a team of 28. We have residential commercial investment divisions and absolute killers. But it's funny, Ramon, you asked me the question. You said, like, you're very purposeful in your work and intentional. I think the reason you feel like that is only because I've had to be, right? Because in that story I just told you, I've made more mistakes than most people probably watching this. The one constant we were able to do is every year look back and then recalibrate. And thankfully I have a wife like I do, and we sit down and we have those conversations. And I think the reason that I try and be purposeful and intentional is what gets measured gets improved. And the one constant I've seen in my life, whether it was me getting out of the bad situation I was in Montreal, to me getting out of my last working environment to this one, to still feeling like I'm just getting started today and wanting more next year, it all came back to radical candor and being willing to look at my own faults, but even more importantly, being able to point as to where I want to go and then be willing to do the work consistently enough to actually get there. That's why being intentional really, really does matter to me.
I love that, Justin. One thing you just said, the word consistency. One of my friends is Lamar Tyler, Traffic Sales and Profit, owns a huge, multi-million-dollar community and more for business owners. And I interviewed him, and he said, Ramon, a lot of the speeds and feeds I can mention, Ramon, but consistency. Can you just unpack and continue on that word a bit more? Why is consistency so important? It could be just my words, not yours, but you said it.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that's an important part of it. What does that mean to you? And why consistency?
Well, it's compounding interest, right? So I can give you $100 all at once, or I can give you a penny a day for a year. And if you look at the compounding principles of interest from a savings account perspective, that 1 penny a day compounded over 10 years versus $100 a year for 10 years, it's not even close in terms of the return. And what I've learned in my life was I lived a very long time looking for instant gratification. But it wasn't until I started doing consistent investments into little things, putting pennies into my faith, my family, my fun, my finances, my fitness, that I started seeing the results of it, right? So I think when people get into the real estate industry, very bright, shiny object, they watch Selling Sunset and, you know, they're expecting it to just be commission checks and golf courses. What I really try and tell them is you could be great at selling shoes, at running a custom coffee shop or whatever it is, if you're willing to be consistent at the basics, which is learning, which is prospecting, which is working on your business, and then following through on the things that you promised people you would do. So why I think consistency is the most important thing that you need to focus on no matter what business you're in is if you look at any industry, the failure rate, I bet you, is directly associated with people's lack of consistency in the actions that they are avoiding. Meanwhile, every single successful entrepreneur I've ever studied, success to a fault has lied within the consistency of them being willing to apply themselves for an unreasonable enough time that they blow by their competition.
I love that unreasonable amount of time. So, I mean, the obvious question for me, Justin, then when do you give up? When do you say, you know what, I've tried to love my daughter. She still doesn't love me. Terrible example, of course, because I wouldn't give up. Sure. You know, I'm going to give up. I've tried to sell it. I've knocked on this door and they haven't said yes to me selling some commercial property. I'm going to give up, or whatever it may be. Is there some time where you say, no, I'm done? Can you unpack the both sides of that? Or maybe there's only one side. What do you say to that?
I don't think that there's any giving up because I don't believe that there's ever any failure, right? So your situation of the daughter who, you know, doesn't love their father anymore, that's a very loaded emotional statement to make, right? Well, and the reason that I point that out is like if I'm the father in that situation and I'm tying my happiness to does my kid love me or not love me, right? And success is defined by my kid texting me and saying, I love you. Despite whatever happened, I love you. So even if I get that text message saying, hey, we have our differences and things are what they are, I still love you at our core, you would think that would be deemed a success. But the parent in that situation probably still feels like that's a failure because maybe they don't have the access that they want to the child or whatever that looks like. Instead of focusing on the things that they can do to maybe improve the access, focusing on the outcome leaves people in a position where then they get self-deprecating and they feel like they go down this spiral. People that fall into bad eating habits, you know, people that fall into addictions in different circumstances, they're never going to break free of the circumstance unless they're willing to realize that there is no true failure unless you give up, unless you are consigned to put your narrative on the other person and start blaming them for the situation that you're in. So when it comes to me, I use failure as a refining tool. Failure will give me the ability to determine if I want to work with a client that doesn't see the value in the services that I provide. If I show a client 1 million houses and we have a buyer representation agreement signed that I'm their agent, and then they go directly to a listing agent and they do a deal with that agent, that contract allows me to sue them and get paid whatever that fee is going to be. And I can do that. I can go and get my feedback from them. Would I? Probably not. I'm probably going to use that perceived failure as a refining tool for how could I have avoided this in the future? How could I make sure that, you know, the right fit clients find me and the wrong fit clients find their way out the door? Or I can even look at it as a net positive and say, sucks in this file. You know what? The 25 hours I spent showing those properties, guess how much knowledge I got about the market? Right. You know, I know every single house on those streets. Yeah, sure. I burned time capital in that transaction, but maybe working with that client would have been somebody who would have sued me if I did the transaction for something that they did wrong. Like, you don't know the outcome. So why spend any time focusing on the failure or perception of failure, if that answers your question?
No, it does. I'm curious then, Justin, how do we, and again, by the way, Justin, one more time, can you please tell people who you are, how to reach you? I appreciate that. I got some people in the middle of this juicy listen. Who's this guy? Well, Justin, one more time, tell us your
it's
YouTube channel, Prime Media. Tell us one more time who you are. And who
my name's Justin Konikow, Konikow. Go to Instagram. That's probably the best place to find me, and you'll find all my links for YouTube and all the other platforms there.
I love it. And so, Justin, David Goggins has one story. There could be others, and you can use anyone you want. David Goggins, the a special forces guy. I got tired and I changed. We hear this. Talk to people, Justin, who are listening to us right now, stuck in their own minds. How do you change yourself? How do you stop yourself? Because hearing Justin Ramon, maybe it sounds easy, But how does the person who say, I want to stop smoking? How does the person who say, no, I can do better? How does the person who say, I can lose weight? How does the person say, know what? I've given up too many times. This is going to be the year. Is it going to be one day? What's that saying you said, Justin?
Yeah. I mean, you need to make the decision at the end of the day. Is tomorrow going to be another one day? One day I'm going to quit smoking. One day I'm going to spend time with my family. One day I'm going to do this, that, or the other. Or is tomorrow going to be day one? I think a very easy way to do it is just writing it down. There's apps like Stride, or you can use a notebook and then just write, today I'm not going to smoke. And then check the box off at the end of the day, or put an X on the box the next day. And then the next day, write down, today I'm not going to smoke. Today I'm not going to smoke. What you're going to find is maybe you don't smoke 1 out of 7 days. And then 2 weeks later, maybe you don't smoke 2 out of 7 days, and then 4 out of 7 days, and then 7 days. And you're like, oh crap, I just got through a week. And the next thing you know, you're like, I'm going to try and go for a month. And then you're going to disassociate yourself with the feeling of being tied to nicotine, and then potentially be in a place where you're like, I'm going on vacation. You know what? I'm not going to smoke for the whole vacation. And then you're going to make a decision that you're just not going to do it anymore. I've struggled with addiction in my life in many different circumstances where I needed to just make a massive change. I'm still making changes today, but the key is you have to measure it. So the process that works for me, and it doesn't work for everybody, is to write it down somewhere and look at it, and then not be attached to the outcome like I described, but just be aware of the situation.
Yeah. It's funny you said that, Justin. Not funny, but interesting. I just started a challenge with my youth group. I didn't know it was called what you're just saying it, but I started a challenge of daily Bible reading and prayer in my youth group. And every day in our WhatsApp group, hundreds of people are putting a hashtag and saying what they read. So it's ironic. Didn't realize it. I'm sure subliminally I knew it was right, but writing it down, they're typing it out. So it does work.
Accountability, actually, people in your community is a big piece too. So if you can get around a bunch of people, like 3 of the guys here, we were talking about a health challenge for January, and we just happen to be drivers, very similar type of people, and likely we're going to be holding each other accountable for doing it, right? So I think getting in a community of like-minded individuals with similar goals, and then not being afraid to tell people what your goals, will help you get there for sure.
No, for sure. Justin, let's switch gears a slight bit. And we may have touched on this already. I have a feeling we did, but the aspect of purpose. And again, I'm saying things that I just admire in you very much, but you seem very purposeful. We've had conversations in a good way. Hey, Ramon, listen, not doing this right now. Can't do this, won't do this, or not a good time for me. Or listen, everybody, don't bother me for 6 months, 6 weeks, whatever. You get what I'm trying to say. Talk about why you're like that, Justin, but what's the lesson we can learn about just living a purposeful life, a calculated, not in some TV show, but in a good way, calculated, purpose-driven life. Can you help me unpack that a bit? Explain that to us.
I think it started with a book that I read called A Purpose-Driven Life. That definitely helped.
Okay.
And I think of the 2 worlds I lived in. Like, if I want to zoom out for everybody to really know my story, I lived for the world for a very long time until I didn't, right? When I was struggling and overcame addiction, I literally asked God a question: can you show me that you're real? He flat out did. And I said, I saw what life was like when I lived for him versus living for the world. So living for the world to me was, working jobs that you hate to buy things you don't like to impress people who don't like you, because you're trying to fill this hole, right? So then when I started living for the fruits of the spirit and trying to be more loving and graceful and patient and kind, less envious and greedy and all the things that the world takes, then I started just realizing how much more abundant life could be. And again, I'm still like, I'm maybe a 1 straight blue belt of where I want to be. But when I go back to why I try and be purposeful, it goes back to setting those goals with my wife every year and sitting down with her and saying, what does next year look like for us? So let's talk about 2023. 2023 for me came after 2022. 2022, I took off on Clubhouse. I was getting speaking opportunities all over the place. I watched other people that were in real estate jumping on all these stages, speaking in, New York and Florida and all these different places. And I was locked in Canada. I couldn't leave, which was like, it drove me bananas, because I was like, dude, like I could speak on these huge stages, expand my network, and like convince myself of all these reasons on why I should be doing it. But I was like, okay, I trust you, God. Like, you have me here for a reason. And I kept feeling this prompting of like, you are different than the world. So I actually made a concerted decision, regardless of if I was going to be locked in Canada or not, that 2023, I was going to say no to speaking decisions, because I felt like operationally we weren't prepared. Like the company we are building, I felt like the infrastructure was for a company that was much smaller than the volume we were actually doing. So we took 2023 and we realized that we needed to be purposeful and say no to everything so that we could figure out our organizational structure, our system stack, who are we serving, what's the vision of what Prime's going to be. And then now we're actually coming out of that cocoon and we've implemented our planning document. We've implemented some new SOPs and team structures. We're ready for these big regulatory changes going into January. And now I'm starting to realize that the planning I'm doing this year for 2024 is to really trust the system that we've built now and start relying on the leadership team to step up into the roles that they're ready for. I'm just micromanaging too much. And maybe a way that I do that and be purposeful in that is to go to your amazing event in April or go and speak at these places that I maybe wasn't in the right posture for back in 2022. But by doing so now will allow my team to step into their roles and allow me to actually step back and focus more on the marketing, the lead generation for my clients, the negotiating, get more deals done, and actually be in the right seat on the bus. But I would never have been intentional had I not set the initial vision with my wife of, hey, what do we do next year? Like, what does this company look like in 3 to 5 years? And the vision for 2025 and 2026 may be drastically different than what we think it is today. It always is. I get to the end of 2024 and be like, dude, I was wrong. This is what it is now. But the vision allows you to be intentional and see the opportunities when you know what you're tracking towards in ways that you wouldn't have seen it otherwise.
What things, Justin, and thank you for sharing that, Justin, are muscle memoried, whether it's personal life or business? What things do you write? Maybe you write everything. I guess what I'm trying to ask, I'm trying to think like, do some things you have to be like, oh, that's right. I haven't had a quarterly meeting with my wife yet, or I haven't said thank you to my team. Let me get that done. And then are there some things you've done it so long, it's driven. Nope. Daughter time. It's not even a question. If you get, and then as you're sharing it, Justin, what can we learn from that? What things, is there anything we can learn from just your journey of some things are routine already and some things, no, you only do it because it's written or a Google pop-up?
So I have to operate off a calendar.
Okay.
That's just how my brain works. My wife doesn't. She's very different. She has an incredible internal alarm. If she knows I got to be up at this time, she can get up. I set 5 alarms. Like I sleep through a earthquake.
I feel better. You're human.
Yeah, crazy human. But I also when I plan out my ideal week, my ideal month, year, that's a lot for somebody that doesn't think like that. So it's not like everybody has to do it like this, but I map out my calendar so I can track it. And then I move things around based on where I'm at. So in terms of muscle memory, things that are in my calendar that I don't need to think about is typically waking up, reading my Bible, doing my morning routine. Like that is automatic, even working out, probably to my detriment. So I was even thinking about this for my schedule next year. I may modify my workouts and do them a little bit later in the day because I feel like my body's adapted that, oh, we wake up, we work out, and maybe I'm not as efficient because of the time of day I'm doing it. So that's how something that's ingrained in muscle memory, but I may change because it's almost too regulated. Now, something that I need to do more of, and I'm like yearning to figure out, is making sure I have more quality time with my wife. So we front load a lot of our meetings. So with my team, for example, we have a red zone meeting at 8:30 to 9. We typically do training 9 to 10, Tuesdays and Thursdays. Then we do once a month, the family reunion, which we just did. Like it's all automated.
Yes.
But my best time of day with my wife is probably from 9 to 10. So I actually think what I'm probably going to do is modify our training schedule, get the team here in the afternoon so they can have their morning routines, do what they have to do, their parents, they have families, whatever. And then 9 to 9:30, make sure I connect with my wife and take that walk with her so that we're in sync, so that when we go to work, we're in a better place. So in terms of tools for your people, I think just mapping out what are the things that you have to do on a regular basis and putting them as repeating tasks in your calendar is a great way to get a visual, but please do not get attached to the structure. Be fluid in the structure and find opportunity zones to improve on the different facets of your life, because I may be killing it in work, but if I'm failing in my marriage, then this is all for naught. I could sell all the houses in the world and it's meaningless if my wife and my daughter resent me, right?
Yeah, no, you're right. And Justin, you and I echo similar along that, several things I have to just put into Google or whatever. It doesn't matter the tool. Tool matters, but do something. But for sure, things like push-ups, drinking a bottle of water, eating an apple Bible reading, prayer, those are like muscle memory. I've done it for years. So
That's
it's
awesome.
kind of not perfect in it, but I don't need a reminder for those 7 things starting my day. But everything else, definitely Fridays do this, Thursday do that. Appreciate it very much. Justin, leave us with some tips and insight on business building, if you don't mind. This has been a good discussion, and I want to have you back again with me. So I'm going to give you back some of your time. But Justin, you're building a business, and this can go far. So I'll leave it to you. But hiring, marketing, working with your wife, things of this nature. What are some things you're doing well in business that we can learn from you that you're doing really well, or things you've maybe screwed up on that we can learn as well? Either way you want to take it.
So the one thing I would say is you're not as talented as you think you are, but the good news is you could actually accomplish more than you ever thought possible. So why I said that was that's something that I'm thinking about is despite the perceived success I have in my industry, I still feel like I need to strip it down, look at the basics, and keep rebuilding it from ground up. And going back to our conversation around consistency, if you are willing to be consistent for an unreasonable long enough time, I think that anybody watching this has the ability to create something in a life that they never thought possible. So the way that you could do that is by getting around other people like Ramon and other people that are actually building businesses and learning from them. And again, not being attached to this idea of what you think success is, but being fluid in your own journey. I think we're all beautifully and wonderfully made in our own image, and Ramon's set of skills and goals and visions is different than Justin's. But as a community, getting around people that are actually practitioners is so crucial. So engage, support people that are actually practitioners, and you'll be surprised at the level of access you get.
I love it. Justin Konikow, one more time, give us some of those websites. I know you have some things for those in the real estate industry, and you have those for just cool humans like me who just want to learn more. Give us a few of those links and websites and YouTubes one more time, please.
Yeah, pretty simple. Again, justinkonikow.com is actually a website that you can go to for a lot of my resources on what I just spoke about. And then Prime Real Estate Brokerage on YouTube. If you go follow that channel, you'll get my crazy insights into where I think this real estate market's going. And if you need an agent anywhere on the planet, I'm your guy. You can DM me on IG, or you can go through Prime Brokerage and we'll get you set up.
I love it. And again, everybody, my name is Ramon Ray, publisher of zoneofgenius.com. This is the Rundown with Ramon. If you want to connect with me, you know how to do so. Justin Konikow, thanks so much, and God bless.